We'll give it a second to see if people log on. Comcast is playing some fun games today. All right, if you're there, do me a favor, just let me know that you can hear and that we're live. I think we are. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Okay, I see people logging on, so I think, thank you, Michael. Okay, so apologize for that. This is obviously late for us. For some reason, I was going in and out, and it was a connection issue. It wasn't Facebook. It was a connection issue. We use a third-party streaming app, and that was unable to connect. So glad to be here. Glad to not be watching the impeachment proceedings for the next few minutes, and what have you. Pretty busy day, and quite a bit to talk about. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for sticking with me. So let's talk about, first of all, the impeachment. And I was against the impeachment moving forward. It just seemed to me, and I gave the reasons why, and I used the example of Obama yesterday, in that there was so much pressure on Obama when he took over to go after Bush and Cheney for war crimes. The left was pushing it hard. There was every op-ed saying they should do it, and he didn't do it. And that was, in my opinion, personal and political maturity. It was saying, let's move on as a country. And I kind of agreed with that when it came to the impeachment, and said, all right, he's out of office. Can he run again? Yes. Will he run again and succeed? I don't think so, especially with a moderate like Biden in the office. So much of that Trump base is not necessarily for Trump, or they're for Trump because of hatred of this idea of socialism in the far left. Whether that's real or not, that's one of the reasons and one of the logical approaches, or the logic they have for their approach. With Biden in office, I don't see that happening. And so I was against the impeachment moving forward, especially knowing it has no chance of reaching the 2/3 majority that it needs. It has no chance of getting to the 67 that it would need to pass, to get a guilty verdict. And I was asked by many people yesterday, has your opinion changed? Have you looked at it now and said, because yesterday I watched the same thing many of you watched, those videos put together. And by the way, the question here is, the Democrats put on, not really question, an actual legal argument, an intelligent presentation, an effective presentation. The Republicans put on an awful presentation, like almost unwatchable, like not complete sentences kind of presentation. So that didn't help. However, most of the Republican votes are in the bag anyway. There are about 5 or 6 that may have been up for play. I'm curious to see how Romney votes. I think he's looking at a future political career. So did it make sense to me to say, hold on a second, let's impeach this guy who's now out of office to guarantee he never runs again, or some sort of closure or accountability for his actions? Or do we say there's a new president in, he won, it's over, let's move on? I am in the move on category. Then yesterday happened, and we heard effectively the timeline of not just only what happened, not just we saw what Trump saw. So the Democrats were very smart to put the coverage of Fox News as their coverage, because we knew Trump would be watching that. Then the Tuberville call, which was, as this is happening, as Pence is whisked out of the chamber into safety, the president calls Tuberville and is told about Pence, and his reaction is, we need to delay and fight this vote further. Then Giuliani calls and says, we need to fight for this further. It was crazy. There's no way you can look at what happened and the events with an open mind and not be convinced that this guy not only incited this, did nothing to stop it. That said, the concern that I have is you're still not going to get a guilty verdict. So with all the damning evidence that came out, what good happens? If you announce he is guilty and he wins, his supporters go crazy. If you say not guilty, which the vote will lead to, his supporters will go crazy. So you have no way to win if you're a Democrat. What is there to gain if you're a Democrat from these proceedings? Nothing positive. And if you're looking for, you have his supporters who have said this was fair, we should have done this, our election was stolen, stop the steal, all this other stuff, and then get a not guilty verdict. There are people who celebrated OJ's not guilty verdict. It was absurd, but they celebrated it. There will be people who celebrate this not guilty verdict. And these are people who have a history of violence, a history of craziness. I don't want them emboldened. And I don't think anything the Democrats did here by moving forward with an impeachment helps. How does it help the country move forward? How does it help get all these crazy groups behind us? How does it help eliminate the claims of a stolen election and broken machines? I don't see that. So all of this is great, and I see Democrats saying, oh my God, and Republicans need to do the right thing, and I'll talk about that in a second, and oh, this is terrible, and this is awful, this righteous indignation thing. To get what? To clap that, hey, we got an impeachment trial? Because no matter what the outcome, you didn't gain anything. And if you didn't gain anything, why'd you do it? There's no accountability coming. You're not going to get 17 Republicans to vote with you. And we knew that from day one. Great presentation. Overwhelming evidence. But that's just the way it is. That said, this whole righteous crap from the Democrats of we hope our Republicans stand up and do the right thing. Republicans are elected to represent their district. Democrats are elected to represent their district. So it's certainly convenient for Democrats to say Republicans should stand up and do the right thing, knowing that if they stand up and vote to indict him, or not indict, but find him guilty, it will almost literally cost them a future election, opening the door for Democrat. Well, that's convenient. So, yeah, they should stand up and do the right thing, but it will also help us get a Democrat in that seat. Right? So at the end of the day, what did we gain here? And I had a State Representative Sean Scanlon posted today that he felt that it wasn't needed, this impeachment early on, but he changed his mind after seeing the evidence. An argument of history can't repeat itself, but history will repeat itself. There'll be these uprisings again. And at the end of the day, you ended up with a trial when you had a president in office now who's looking to move forward, who wants to push stimulus and infrastructure and get past this pandemic and want to move everything forward, and everything comes to a standstill for 2 or 3 or 4 days as we, as a nation, go into the past. Was what happened that day awful? Yes. But there was nothing to gain from a trial. I don't see anything positive coming from a trial. And I question, yes, there's so much evidence to support the arguments. But the Democrats were pretty against Kavanaugh, too, when the evidence was extremely questionable. We're for a trial and we're for conviction when it's politically advantageous. Republicans have to ask themselves a simple question. You're elected to represent your district. Does it make sense to vote for impeachment for a guilty plea or vote to call Trump guilty if it's going to cost you the next election? Because it very well may. And it very well cost you a primary within your own party. It's easy from Connecticut for us to say, hey, listen, they should vote the right thing. They should find him guilty. They should be American and patriotic and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, they represent their districts. And those are districts that in many cases, 65, 70, 75% of them voted for Trump and would likely get close to that again. So I can't fault the Republican for not voting for guilty plea. And I have to question the Democrats' move to bring this impeachment to trial, knowing there's nothing to gain. A guilty verdict would embolden a certain group of people. The same group of people would be emboldened by a not guilty verdict. And we knew a not guilty verdict was coming. Let's look at some of these comments. Michael, based on what I'm hearing, the bigger threat is if he runs again and loses, how far will he encourage his disciples to go? So the question is, will it be him encouraging his disciples, or will the verdict encourage his disciples? I don't know what Trump will do. He doesn't have the same platform he had before. Now, he had Twitter before, he had Facebook before, he had Instagram, but all these other, he doesn't have those platforms anymore. He doesn't have the bully pulpit. So, what is his reach? How will he get to those people? And the Republican base, not the Trump supporters, but the base, many of them are looking to move on. Many of the Republicans in the Senate and in Congress in general are looking to move on. So I don't know the impact he's going to have. I don't think he can run and win again. But we didn't think he could run 4 years ago and win the nomination. What is my definition of moderate? Moderate is somebody who has the ability to think on both sides, think through issues as opposed to party. So I'm not sure the context of that question. We can hope he gets indicted and convicted for other crimes. Okay, you have a much greater chance of that happening. New York going after him for taxes. Something along those lines happening in a Democratic state with a Democratic attorney general going after him, that makes far more sense. Steve, I wonder what Nancy knew before the events of the day. Why wasn't there more security around the Capitol? See, that's one of those questions that's a conspiracy theory in a question. I wonder what Nancy knew before the events of the day. We see that happening in town where we have, the crazy guy. We need an investigation into this. Do you have any evidence to support that Nancy Pelosi had more information about this before? Or are we just talking? You're just throwing stuff out there. Because that's not helpful. It's not helpful to just throw stuff out there. I wonder, where was he the night of that murder? That's implying that person had something to do with the murder. What did Nancy Pelosi know before this? What the hell does that have to do with anything? Do you have some evidence that she knew something? We see that all the time. Oh my God, town hall's covering up this. Well, do you have any evidence of that? No, but they must be. What the hell is that? Bring facts to this. Evidence, a highly edited show. No, it was a highly edited show, yes. But there was a timeline of events that have not been disputed. That there was a speech, that there was a march. We have timestamps on his tweets. That's the most damning aspect of this. The damning aspect isn't the speech. The damning aspect is once the shit show started, he didn't do anything. Now, you want to say there's some biased news reports? Some of the news reports out there were saying he was basically gleeful in the White House. And the sources were White House people. You don't trust the media? Okay, let's not trust that statement. But we know he did nothing to stop it. The country was under attack. This isn't a rally in Seattle. This wasn't a rally somewhere. By the way, Black Lives Matter rallied in Washington and didn't storm the Capitol. So if you want to compare rally to rally, Black Lives Matter, no storm Capitol. Trump rally, storm Capitol. If you want to compare. I know there's this huge demand to compare, oh my God, how come everybody wasn't crazy when Black Lives Matter wasn't rallying? People were damaging businesses and things of that nature. Not a single remote comparison between the two. An attack on the capital of the country, incited by the president. That's crazy. That's absurd. And we can agree that it was wrong while also questioning whether or not the impeachment was the right thing to do. Because I don't see how in history, when we look back on this, an impeachment trial will help the country move on. I don't see that. Evidence I highlighted that showed no witnesses. He would be 78 years old in 2024 to run again. I don't know if he'll run again or not. He's an entertainer. It's what he is. I was not shocked when he won. I wrote an article about 3-4 months before the election, 4 years ago, that he was going to win. And the reason for that was Hillary's incredibly horrible likability numbers. But this is the guy who was in Home Alone movies. He's likable. And to that base, he was the voice of opposition to the evil left, to they're going to change our country and make us socialist and all this other stuff left. The odd part is that base are the base that gets probably the most from the government. They're getting all the stimulus money, a bunch of stimulus money now. They're the ones who were getting helped by Obamacare. They're the states that were getting the most federal aid. Didn't register. Michael, it's not the politicians I worry about, but the extremists who have posted about blood running out of the Capitol. We're talking domestic terrorism at this point. Well, that's what it was. We saw domestic terrorism. That's what it was. And by the way, this whole argument, this is not Republican versus Democrat. It's Trump supporters versus the rest. That was Mike Pence. Mike Pence was a candidate for president. Mitt Romney turned and ran, was a former president for or candidate for president on the Republican ticket. Did quite well. These are leaders of the Republican Party whose life was in danger. They had rope hanging, yelling, "Hang Mike Pence." What's Republican about that? The most conservative guy there is. Anti-gay, won't be in a room with another woman. That's how conservative he is. That's how Republican the guy is. And you're siding with the guy who, as that man was being rushed to safety, was posting what a letdown Mike Pence was. Didn't call him to see how are you. Nothing. If that happened to Joe Biden, how long do you think it would have taken Obama to call him? Seconds. There's no argument here. What happened was despicable and wrong. It is not comparable to Black Lives Matter. That is a nonsense argument. It doesn't hold water anywhere. The only question I still remains for me is, does this make sense? Does this whole impeachment make sense? And does it help the country move forward? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it does. But we'll cut this short today because I started late, and I apologize for that. I know a lot of people, when they came on at 4, I'm getting text messages throughout the day. Sorry, I missed you. Sorry, I missed you. I'll get back to them afterwards. But we'll be back on Monday. I don't have words for this. I watched yesterday in a certain amount of horror myself. I mean, it was just shocking to see. That Tuberville call was amazing. Romney turning and running was amazing to see. I didn't realize the full extent of the chants. The hang Mike Pence chants. Let's go after them chants. This was a violent mob. This wasn't a peaceful protest run amok. They were there with purpose. And it's a sad day for a nation. I just don't know if this impeachment trial is helping get past it. Steve Sully, no, just a church on fire. I'm not sure what that responds to. The best punishment for a narcissist like him is failure, loss, and shame. What's funny with a narcissist is they may never feel it. We have somebody in town in Brantford who does this. And all he needs is 2 or 3 other minions to reinforce and listen to him, and they feel like king of the world. Last night we had an RTM meeting. People were kicked out, blocked on Zoom, because they can't control themselves. There's no level of maturity, emotional maturity, intelligence. There's nothing there. It's just yell and scream, yell and scream, yell and scream. And as long as you have 2 or 3 other people that somehow agree with you, no matter how bad your nonsense is, it just feeds that narcissism. He's got his own army. Literally has his own army. So I'd love to see him with Bill Clinton, share a cell with Cosby for their sexual predator crimes. Okay. I'll let that one go. So I'm going to watch the rest of the trial. I'm expecting no surprises. I'd be curious to see how some key member votes. I'm really watching how Romney votes. I have a feeling Romney's going to be on the ballot in 4 years. He's a moderate Republican, and I think he would be the answer to whoever the Democrats run. I think a moderate Republican in this country could do really well. Romney ran against a force of nature in Obama, a generational person who was a brilliant, brilliant communicator. And I think Romney's already come out with a child tax credit proposal. I think he's planning on setting up a run in 3 or 4 years. So we'll see. But we'll call it a day on that note. We'll be back on Monday at 4 o'clock. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. To those that didn't hear me earlier, the only stock I'm in right now is Amazon. No, I take that back. I'm on Amazon and Caterpillar, and I'll hold those. Amazon will hold for 6 months. That'll be a long-term hold. And that's it. If I have something else the next couple of days, I'll put it. I would vote for Gabbard over Romney. So I actually liked Tulsi Gabbard early on. And then she came out with some things that were crazy. Just like, come on. So I'm a registered Democrat. I'm likely a Democratic voter, depending on who it is. But that Romney versus Obama, I voted for Obama, but Romney against almost anybody else, I'd have a hard time not voting for him if I can get past the religion thing. That's a hard thing for me. But if I can get past it, I think he's a reasonable, logical person. And, not for nothing, he implemented Romney Care before it was Obamacare. So he saw the benefits in Massachusetts of a more socialized medicine system of delivering medicine to people. And I could appreciate that. And I'm actually a proponent of a more universal healthcare system. It just makes sense. In any event, guys, have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy it, and I will talk to you on Monday at 4 o'clock. Thank you.